morning. Let me see if I got this thing on. Am I on? Yeah, there we go. There we go. All right. It is good to see y'all. Lord's blessed us with some rain. And some more rain. We were down at the beach. We left last Sunday afternoon and came back on Friday. It rained a little bit down there, but I heard we got quite a bit. Well, good stuff. We'll have our pond back in no time, right? Out here at the church. Good stuff. Well, before we get into our study this morning, let's pray, please. Heavenly Father, Lord, we are grateful for another day that you give us, allowing us to take breath, Lord, to wake up to another day, Lord. And we're so grateful for the many things that we're blessed with. And one of those is the ability to be able to get up and study together this morning as we are going to recap and go over the overall book of Leviticus this morning. Lord, help us, Lord, to take the things that we talk about today and think about it, meditate on them, Lord, and apply it to our lives, Lord. And just help us to continue to be learners. Help us continue to have a learning attitude, that we're willing to go out there and we're willing to study, Lord, and apply your words to our lives, Lord, in your Son's name. Amen. So, last week, I gave y'all some homework. And anybody want to tell me what that homework was? Oh, y'all are talking. It's kind of like, they're like, wait, what homework? What are you talking about? What are you Last week I said this week we were going to do an overall, like we're going to recap Leviticus. And what I wanted us to do this week is I wanted us to look at the book as a whole, all 12 weeks of it, and what did you learn? What were some overall lessons that really spoke to you from the study? What stood out to you? So when I was looking at it, I come up with about 7 big lessons that I took away from this. And there were many more. But there were just 7 that stood out. So what I would like to do this morning is, before I go through mine, I don't want to take anybody else's, and I don't think we need to say the same thing twice. So from anybody here this morning that would like to maybe give some of theirs, what really stood out to you this morning about the book of Leviticus? What was something that you took from it, a lesson that really spoke to you?
Well, God was serious about the way that He wanted things, that you couldn't tamper or alter to your life.
That's right.
It's got to be God's way or no way.
That's it. God is not a God who compromises, right? He's not a God who compromises. He's somebody that's, when He says He wants it done His way, that's the standard, right? That's what He expects, and He's not going to deviate from that standard, okay? And, of course, there's a parallel to that, in that sometimes, and maybe this is just more of a us being human thing, that in our own self-interest. Maybe it's the fact that we think that we can negotiate all things. Maybe it's the fact that we think that, maybe it's, with some of us, it's a rebellious nature, that, you're telling me to do this, but really we can do that, right? Because it's not a big deal. Well, from the book of Leviticus, did we get the idea that it's a big deal to God? Yes. When He says, do this, this is what He requires. This is His standard. Do not change it. All right, that was a good one. Anybody else want to share one?
Terry,
Go ahead.
wrote down a few things.
Go ahead.
Leviticus teaches the godly order of the sacrificial system, the blood, the priestly system, laws, rules, regulations, the consequences of their failure to comply to these laws. The select people, they were to be separate from all the other nations, loyal with regard to the judgment and upon disobedience. The importance of safeguarding the nation and the unfolding of the messianic idea. Without paying the blood, there's no remission.
There you go. Now, Mr. Jerry, those those are all really good ones, and there's a lot to unpack there. So I'm going to pull out a couple of them. You know, God, from what Mr. Jerry was just saying there, God laid out all of His expectations, correct? He laid out all of His expectations. This is what you do. This is how you do it. This is when you do it, correct? So is there any confusion in His system? None. Would anyone, if I'm looking at this, do I understand what I have to do? Yeah, you know, and that's the mark of any, you know, that, you know, just from a teaching standpoint, you know, if I'm, and I know we have a couple of educators, whenever I give a test, right, and my test is a summative, okay, it's, you know, we start on Monday, I give a test on Friday, right? Well, let's just say this. Let's say that I give the test and half the class miss numbers 14 through 17. All right? Like nobody gets them right. Did I do something wrong as the teacher? Yes. Yes, I did. You know how I know that? Because everybody in the class, is everybody in the class a C student? No. You've got a bag of Skittles, right? You got your A's, you got your you got your B's, your C's, and unfortunately you got some that probably don't put forth the effort. Okay? But if everybody misses those questions, then I got to look back and say, wait a minute, what did I do wrong? Right? As a teacher, I got to look at that and say, where did I confuse them? Where did I not teach this to the standard that it needed to be taught for them to get this right, to be set up for success, correct? And so with us as people, sometimes we make things confusing. You know, even the best of us, we make it confusing. Everybody in here made the wrong decision sometime? Yeah. You know, sometimes we fail at the systems we try to create. We tell our kids, don't do that, or what? There's going to be a consequence. And sometimes do we always follow through with the consequence? No. Right? Because, you know, even though I really mean it, when I say it, I'm going to tear your tail up. Then what happens? They cross the red line. Sometimes we're like, I really don't want to do it. I feel bad about it. I feel bad about it too. I'm too tired because I've been wrestling with them all day. And 3, the grandparents can get mad at me if they find out, right? Y'all know what I'm talking about. That's a funny thing, you know. My dad had no problem wearing me out whenever I crossed the line, but let me look like I'm going to pop Luca. Don't do that around me. Don't you whip that young'un around me. You didn't have a problem with me. It's different. How is it different? I guess one day I'll figure it out. Maybe I'll be saying the same thing, right? So he lists the laws. He lists the statutes. He tells them how to sacrifice. He does all of these things. He sets everything out in front of them. The whole system, the sacrificial system, is laid out in such a way that everybody can participate. It's incredible. Okay? All right. What else do we got? Anybody else? If he says there's consequences, there are consequences. And, you know, we look at Nadab and Abihu as the classic example, correct? Leviticus 10, right? You know, don't do this. And there's no favoritism there either, right? I mean, who were Nadab and Abihu? Those Aaron's sons. Who's Aaron? He's the high priest. You know, so in our world today, under our system, right? Under our system, probably in man's system, those two probably got a little bit of leeway, correct? They probably get a little bit of, I would say in some of our systems, the higher up you are on the scale, the more protected you get. Does that make sense? Exactly right. Or the statute of limitations falls off, right? That's typically happens, but God says, no, I don't care who you are, right? Matter of fact, after that, if you'll remember, he told Aaron what? He said, do not mourn for them. Do not do the typical thing you do when you mourn, correct? Do not do it because there will be consequences. And Aaron listened to him. Why? Because look what just happened. God is no respecter of persons, y'all. We are respecter of persons, right? Because that's just in our nature. But God is not. God is not.
Yeah, but if you think about it, those two
That's exactly right. And it served a purpose because we don't read about anybody else doing that. We don't read about anybody else doing that. One of the ones that I had, and then I'm gonna do one of mine, and then I'll throw it back to y'all to give one of yours. Is I thought about, with the fires. We talked about how they had to always keep the fire burning. In Leviticus 6, 12 and 13, and the fire on the altar shall be kept burning on it; it shall not be put out. And the priest shall burn wood on it every morning, and lay the burnt offering in order on it. And he shall burn on it the fat of the peace offerings. A fire shall always be burning on the altar; it shall never go out. Now, when I'm thinking about this, all right, keep the fire burning, but what's the practical application into my life about that? Those literal fires were never supposed to, that literal fire was not supposed to go out. But if you turn over to Mark 12, there's an application, a practical application to us as Christians. We are told in Mark 12 in verses 28 through 31, we are told that the greatest command is to love God with everything, correct? Heart, soul, mind, and strength, right? And to love your neighbor as yourself. Are we ever to lose that love for God? No, not at all. And so I thought it was an interesting parallel of how in this system you have the literal fires got to always be burning. But yet when we parallel that to us as Christians, there's a fire inside for us for God that's always got to be burning as well. Does that make sense? And if it goes out, there's consequences, correct? There's consequences. If they let those fires go out in Leviticus, there was going to be consequences. Well, how about us? If we let our love and our fire for God go out, are there going to be consequences for us? Yes, there will be. And so I thought that's something that stuck out to me. What about y'all? What y'all got? Yeah. The explanation that I've seen through the commentaries and talking to different people is they would have taken the coals and they would have moved the coals with them. And so the fire never literally went out.
One of the things that he told them was, the nations that you drive out, don't take up any of their customs, any of the things that they do. And we need to be aware of the customs of today that are creeping in, that are in direct
Confrontation.
Thank you. Blah, blah.
I have it. It happens to me too.
Anyhow, now I lost my thought. Because we see it creeping into the church and in the society around us that okay, this is okay now, and that's okay now, and it's all against God's word.
That's right.
So we need to be aware of the fact that you warn them men, don't do that. Don't allow that to happen to you. And we need to be aware of the same fact that it creeps in.
And that's a really good point. That's a really good point. If y'all hear me repeat things, one of the things that we've been told from people out there in live stream is, they don't hear the comments and stuff. So I'm trying my very best to repeat it. So don't. So if you hear me doing, that's what I'm doing. So there is. We do see the warning of God to be separate, right? To be holy, be separate, be different from these people. Do not do what they do. As a matter of fact, a lot of the things that God said in here, do not do this, do not do that, are things that were already going on. Do not sacrifice your children, right? And as crazy as that is for us today, that was a regular occurrence within those people in that land. And so God's saying, don't do X, Y, and Z because that's what they do. I want you to be separate. I want you to be different. I want you to be holy because that's going to be a major... If I'm looking at two different groups of people and you are this and they are that, today you're a Christian and non-Christian. Should there be a difference between a Christian and a non-Christian? There should be, yes. And I agree with what Steve said about the lines of confrontation there. It's somebody once said either one of two things happens in the world. either the church changes culture or the culture changes the church. And I think that's what Steve's talking about here, that if we're not careful, instead of the church changing the culture changes the church. And little things, and it's not big things, right? It's little things, little by little, things become acceptable. This, that, things that we never would have believed of that would have happened, happen, right? I mean, we see today that one of the popular ideas within culture is the acceptance of certain lifestyles, right? We talk about homosexuality and those type of things, right? We know that is a lifestyle that God, in His eyes, views as an abomination, correct? It is one that's been listed in Paul's letters as, one that lives in that. This is what's going to be the consequence, right? Now, that's not the only thing, and we got to remember that as Christians, is sometimes we like to pick and choose, and we like to pull out, well, this is wrong and this is wrong, but I'm going to kind of skip around those other 9 things that are listed there too. No, it's all wrong, and it's all unrepentant sin, and that's the problem. But what we're seeing as an example of what Steve's saying is some places are allowing that and saying, not only saying it's okay, saying wholeheartedly, it's fine with God. You can do that, and God has no problem with it.
That's a good example for, like today, the Methodist Church just recently split. They have the Global Methodist,
Yes.
and then there's, I don't know what the other one is called, but one of them accepts homosexuality,
Yes.
and the other one doesn't.
That's right.
And I just kind of feel sorry. And not only that, Episcopalians did the same thing.
Well, that's where it started. That's where I can remember back in 2016.
Yeah.
2016 is when this really started gaining traction, and so and
That's just recent with the Methodist.
well the
Last year.
well with the Episcopal, if I'm not mistaken, their numbers were so far down that they looked at this and they said, you know what, we got to get our numbers up. So how can we get our numbers up?
That's bad.
Let's just open the doors. You know what I mean? And I agree. You got to have people there, right? You got to have people here, because you're not going to make a difference otherwise, right? You got to be able to talk to people, whoever you are, whatever background you come from. The gospel message is take the message to everyone. And so you got to be willing to sit down and talk to everybody about that, right? But you can't compromise truth and godly principles, and that's what we see a lot of. So yes, that is one. God said, be different, be separate, and if you don't, this is what it's going to look like. And if you don't listen to what I'm saying, then there's going to be a consequence.
And see, my niece sent out a thing on Facebook the other day. This is Gay Month or something, right? And it was to all you homo folks out there. And I've been restraining from responding to these things and stuff, but I've decided that I'm just going to start quoting scripture, not condemning it, not saying nothing, just put scripture in there and say, this is what God says about that. That's it. I mean, I'm tired of being called a homophobe because I follow God's laws. And God created the world, and I follow Him. And that's it.
Well, there's a couple of things there. Generally, a good rule is when something aggravates me, take 24 hours and cool off. Because, but with that too, when you start throwing labels out, and you've already lost the conversation at that point. You know what I mean? It's not, y'all, we as people, it's not, you hate the sin, you love the sinner, correct? And so with it, you got to be willing to build that relationship with that person, even when it's tough, even when it's, maybe it doesn't work out the first time with the first discussion. Are you in it for a longer haul? sometimes it takes time, y'all. It takes a lot of time. Do we have?
It never works out.
I'm sorry.
What if it never works out?
At some point, and you've taken them to the truth. You've opened the Bible with them. You've studied with them. And I guess maybe I should restate that everyone has their own time limit in that. How long is too long for you? Like, I'll give you an example. If I'm talking to someone I'm close to, right? Someone I got a close relationship with, am I likely to be willing to go farther with that person than someone else? Yeah. And so some of this is really, when we look at the person we don't know of, we just run into in public, I'm going to sit down and study with that person. But at some point, if they're just not willing to hear it, say, hey, you know what, I love you. I would love to study this again. If you want to approach this again, then here it is. You got my number. Call me. I'll come over. But at some point we got to move on to other people, right? But the sad thing about that is I guess it's kind of subjective to all of us on that time frame. All right. One of the things that stood out to me was the fact that in Leviticus 25, we get in Leviticus 25 and verse 23. We read it reads this. God says, "The land shall not be sold permanently, for the land is mine. For you are strangers and sojourners with me, and in all the land of your possession you shall grant redemption of the land." And so when we get into this idea that things are ours, correct? God says it's all mine, right? Now God was giving them this land. He was giving them this land, what we'd call the promised land there, right? But whose was it really? It was His. It was His. And so when I think about the practical application to us in Colossians chapter 1, let me get over there. In Colossians, where we go? There we go. In Colossians 1 and verse 16, Paul writes, he says, "For by Him all things were created that are in heaven and that are on earth, visible and invisible, whether thrones or dominions or principalities or powers. All things were created through Him and for Him." And so when I look at it from a practical aspect, has that really changed? That land was God's. He was letting them have it, right? He was letting them use it, but it was really His. It's all His anyway, right? And so when I look at that and I think about us today, has God's view since this has been written, since this happened, since this was proclaimed by God, has it really changed? No, it's all His anyway, right? Whatever I got, it's, He blesses me. He gives me the skills that I have to be able to use to build a life, right? But whose is it? His. I'm just like what Troy just said. I'm the steward of the things that He gives me. And so there will be, we're going to be held accountable for what we do with what He gives us, right? We're going to be held accountable for that. And so with it, from a commentary, it said about this, God wasn't trying to foster insecurity when He said this. He wanted His people to avoid greedy materialism. The idea of God owning it should be every Christian's perspective. And so with it, what God was saying here is, I'm giving it to you, but it's mine. He wasn't trying to make them insecure about having the land, but He said this: it's yours if you do X, right? Right? It's like, it's like today. You know what I got in the bill the other day? No, not a Lego set. Lou got enough Legos right now. I got my property tax statement, the early one. You know what it tells me? This is your land if you pay those property taxes, right? Because if you don't pay those property taxes, what happens? They'll take it. They'll take it. Or they'll give you an opportunity to work it out, and if you can't work it out, they auction it, correct? Something like that. The point is, this is yours if, right? And so we see that in our life as well. Anybody else have anything? Yes, ma'am.
I think about
people back in, I don't know, maybe back then they thought a little bit better than we do today. Because at that point it was, hey, you're giving up something, I'm giving up something. It's a good compromise, right? We're just a people who don't want to compromise. We want it our way. And we've always wanted our way throughout history, but back then it was just people could talk to one another, right? People.
Compassionate to one another. I think that's the biggest problem today, is nobody cares about anybody else but themselves. I mean, and if you lose respect for other people, I mean, it's easier to give them, for them, it's easier to give along, because they don't have to make any amends for anybody.
Good point.
When the kids are like this, they're not taught to respect their parents. And from there, they're not respectful to anybody.
Oh, we definitely see that one. I see that one. We see it in education all the time. All the time. When a teacher has to demand a child respect their parent and the parent doesn't, there's an issue. So what else? What else do we have here? Well, I saw that there's the concept in Leviticus of, hey, it's your choice. It's your choice. God gave them a choice, did He not? And in Leviticus, I ain't going to read all these verses because it's a lot of them for sake of time. In Leviticus 26, He lists out two pathways, kind of like what Miss Barbara was just talking about. There's two pathways, right? In verses 3 through 13, He lists, if you do everything I tell you to do, here's how I'm going to bless you. This is all the stuff I'm going to do for you. This is what I'm going to give you. This is how I'm going to help you, right? 3 through 13, that's what He does. Now, from 14 to verse 43, He lists the consequences. All right? You do it what I tell you to do, this is what you get. You don't do what I tell you to, this is what's going to happen. Now, you think about that for a second. 10 verses of blessings and 29 verses of consequences. Now, if I'm looking at that, if you're looking at that, is that an easy decision? Am I going to obey or am I going to disobey? I think I'm going to make the decision to say, you know what, to the best of my ability, I'm going to try to do what He wants me to do. And so God literally gave them, He literally just said, it's your choice. Here it is. You make the decision, but it's on you, right? And He does the same thing with us today. He does the same thing with us as Christians. He says it's your choice. It's your choice. Jesus told those that were with Him in Matthew 16 and verse 24. He said, if anyone desires to come after me, let him deny himself, take up his cross, and follow me. He said, Jesus said, this is what it is. This is what you do. Now, there's a deeper implication to that, as far as salvation and those kind of things. But He says, if anyone desires to come after me, deny, take up the cross, and follow me. That's what it is. It's your choice. And I think from Leviticus all the way up to present day, we see that concept very wide and really billboarded. It's your choice. You make it. But it's a powerful choice. It's a very powerful choice. And for those who did not do it, y'all, we see the ramifications of it. We see the ramifications of it. Y'all, the Israelites, they're not going to make the right choices, y'all. Their history is one of just stumping your toe. If you ever, when there's a couple of mistakes I've made in my life in which I do not seek to allow to happen again. I have walked through my kids' room at night with the light out, and I've stepped on Legos. Do you think that happened again? No, not at all. Not at all. There are things that I don't want to happen twice, but they just repeatedly shot themselves in the foot. Repeatedly did these things. It just makes you scratch your head like, why did you not get it, right? Why do you not get it? There's things that happen and register with us that we get, and we never make those mistakes again. But they just, for whatever reason, did not and would not get it. And maybe it goes back to what Steve was saying in the fact that the influence from the outside was just too much. And it goes to what Miss Rosalie was saying. From a very young age, they were not taught what they were supposed to be taught, right? And that influence and that change in culture helped create some of this stuff. What else do y'all have? What else do y'all have? All right. All right. I took everybody's. I know it's my fault. It's my fault. Over in Leviticus 13, one thing that stood out to me, Leviticus 13, we look at the laws concerning leprosy. And starting in verse 1, the Lord spoke to Moses and Aaron, saying, when a man has on the skin of his body a swelling, a scab, or a bright spot, and it becomes on the skin of his body a leprous sore, then he shall be brought to Aaron the priest, or to one of the sons of the priest. The priest shall examine the sore on the skin of the body, and if the hair on the sore is turned white, and the sore appears to be deeper than the skin of his body, it is a leprous sore. Then the priest shall examine him and pronounce him unclean. Leprosy was a major issue at this time. This was today, there's so many, I guess cancer would be the equivalent today. It's the dreaded, it's the dreaded disease that nobody wants because of all the impact it's going to make on your life. When we look at what leprosy was back in Leviticus, literally you are unclean. You are separated from the group, correct? You are separated from home, so to speak. That was such a toll in so many ways, and we talked about that. The emotional toll that would take, the mental toll that would take, the physical toll it would take. And so with it, what is it, from a practical application, sin has that same effect on us as Christians, because what does sin do? It separates. It forces. It separates us from God, right? Leprosy separated those people from the group. Sin separates us from God. Matter of fact, Isaiah 59, 1 and 2, God said, your what? Your sin and your iniquity has done what? Separated you from me. That's what it is. And so we see that from the parallels there, leprosy was the dreaded disease back then through Leviticus. Matter of fact, there's a lot of time and a lot of pages spent dealing with how we handle this situation because it was that serious. Well, from cover to cover, from a bigger application there, the whole rest of the Bible deals with the issue of sin, does it not? And how we atone for our sin. And warnings about doing this, because sin, y'all, is more devastating than leprosy, right? Leprosy affects the body, but sin affects the soul. And so there's so many warnings with that. Sin, y'all, sin is nothing to be played with or flirted with. And sometimes we want to do that. We want to push the borders, right, of what we can do. And even when we know it's something we shouldn't do. And it comes back to bite us every single time. And that's a lesson that we all that we need to learn. Yes, ma'am.
You might have already gone over this. If you do, I don't remember. So what did the lepers do for the sacrifices and stuff?
There were sacrifices made for the group as a whole,
And they weren't included?
and they would have been covered.
Okay.
Yep.
It wouldn't be
It wouldn't have been fair.
right.
Yeah,
Yes,
there you go.
to have them out and not be able to.
Everything was covered. Everything was covered. And then one. There's a couple more that I had. And anybody wants to chime in, be more than jump in. I also see, y'all, that we don't have any excuse. Troy mentioned something at the very beginning, and I want to go to Leviticus 5, and starting in verse 7, where he's listing here the order and the way that offerings were to be made. In verse 5, he says, "And it shall be when he is, and it shall," what was that? 5, oh, I'm sorry, 7. If he's not able to bring a lamb, then he shall bring to the Lord for his trespass, which he committed, 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, one as a sin offering and the other as a burnt offering. And he shall bring them to the priest, who shall offer that which is for the sin offering first, and wring its head from its neck, but shall not divide it completely. Then he shall sprinkle some of the blood of the sin offering on the side of the altar, and the rest of the blood shall be drained on the base. And he shall offer the second as a burnt offering according to the prescribed manner. So the priest shall make atonement on behalf for the sin that's been committed, and it shall be forgiven him. But if he is not able to bring 2 turtle doves or 2 young pigeons, then he who sinned shall bring for his offering 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a sin offering. And he goes on. You know, what I see there is this: if you can't do this, then you can bring this, and if you can't bring this because of your economic circumstances or whatever's going on, then you can bring this. In other words, what is God doing? He is basically saying nobody is left out. Everybody, no matter if you are extremely rich, middle to rich, middle, and then so on so down to poor poverty. Okay? Wherever you are at on this scale, there is something you can do. And so, was there any excuse for anybody in this system not to do what God expected? Not at all. There is no excuse, none. As a matter of fact, if you look at what Jesus said in Matthew 11. In Matthew 11, in verses 28 and 29, Jesus said, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and lowly in heart, and you will find rest for your souls." Yo, is there any excuse for us today? No. Jesus gave the great invitation. You know, he gives an invitation to all of you who are weary, right? All. I don't care where you fit in that socioeconomic groupings and categories. That invitation is to everybody. There is no excuse. Whether you look at Leviticus and how God crafted this sacrificial system in which everybody could participate, there is no excuse. None. And so that's not going to be something in a society that likes to make excuses. You know, the girls at Georgia Christian, they were getting ready. Soccer team this year, they were getting ready to play in the state tournament. They had a good year, had a real good year, and they were ranked number 3 in state going into the state tournament. And then we got into the month of May. You know what happens in the month of May in South Georgia? It gets hot. Okay, it gets hot. It's like when you're presetting the oven, you start it out slow and then you ramp it up a little bit. It's getting hot. It's a lot different in March and April than it is May to me. It just gets hotter. And so what do they start doing? They start making excuses, right? Start making excuses. It's too hot. Do we got to practice tomorrow? Do we got to train tomorrow? Do we got to do this? It's hot. And I remember the coach, was talking to him about it. And he, if y'all don't get out here and commit, then we ain't gonna last long. And the girls got up there to the last 4, the semifinals, and they got beat. And there was a distinguishable difference between the cardio of the team they played and their cardio. They gave out. And why? Because they didn't prepare. Why? Because excuses. It was hot. It was too hot. We can't make excuses, y'all. And then one of the last ones that I have is that God is serious about worship. He is serious about worship. And in Leviticus 11, in verses 1 through 10, for sake of time, I'm not going to read all of that. And he talks about foods that are permitted, forbidden, unclean animals. He goes into all these types of things. He is serious about worship to him. We need to have that same perspective about worship, in that it's not something we can compromise. It's not something that we can just look at and say, well, let's flip a coin. You know what I mean? If we go, if we don't go. God's serious about it, y'all. He demands this. Why does He demand it? Because of who He is and what He's given up. He is worthy of our worship. And when we're here, we need to be in tune and focused on doing that very thing. Right? He demands that. Is He wrong to demand it? Absolutely not. He's worthy of it. And so when we come to this table this morning, we need to focus on what Christ has done for us. You know, when people are praying this morning, we need to be listening and thinking, you know, about the things that are put out there. And then we need to, as we move on from worship, the people that are prayed for, we need to lift them up, right? We need to do those things. And so when we sing out, when the song leader gets up here, and I don't even know who's got song leading this morning. When Troy gets up here and he leads singing this morning, the songs that he has diligently looked at and picked out, you know, there's a purpose to it, right? There's a purpose to the songs that are selected to go with the message of the morning. But each one of those songs has its own message. You know, am I participating in worship? Am I singing, you know, with the group? Well, they're singing pretty good, but I can't sing. That's not the point. That's not the point. Here's the thing, y'all. Law of averages is 70% can't sing and 30% can. Okay? That's why we're all not on CMT. Okay? All right? I know we all sound good in our cars and our trucks. Is that what God's worried about, y'all?
I remember
No.
Brother Evans. I don't know if you ever were around Brother Evans.
I sat behind him in the old building.
When he sang, I mean, he would run the cats off sometimes. But he sang with all his heart.
Yes, he did. Yes, he did.
He'd tell you out of his mouth, I can't sing.
He was being truthful.
But I loved hearing
I loved his attitude.
Yes,
I loved his attitude towards worship because whatever it was, he was locked in.
yeah.
And that's what we should have. Because if God takes it seriously, y'all, we should take it serious, right? We don't expect any less from our children, things that we take seriously. We want them to take seriously, right? You know, we spend a lot of time, if we're doing it right, like Miss Rosalie was talking about earlier, we spend a lot of time mentoring our kids, right? This is what you do. This is what you not do. Well, why, Daddy? Because of this, okay? This is how you treat people. Why, Daddy? You know what I mean? We spend our whole lives doing that. And we better start early because the way this world is and the way technology is, and if we're not on top of that, it's not going to work out well for them and what we're trying to get across to them. And so,
I'm sorry, Terry.
go ahead.
Not only do we have to enforce that in our kids, we have to show them from the way we
Yes,
people, they see how we treat them.
that's exactly right. Good point, Miss Ellen. It doesn't need to be lip service. It needs to be